Craigslist is an online classified ad website founded by Craig Newmark in 1995. The website is laid out similar to a newspaper's classified ads section and allows you to search specific cities for everything from job postings, garage sales, and even dating. While posting content does require you to adhere to specific guidelines, due to the high volume of ads posted each day, there are numerous ads that are sometimes up for days or even weeks before they are finally flagged and removed from the site. These violations include everything from prostitution, trafficking of stolen goods, and worse. There have even been instances of people replying to these ads and arranging meetups with posters, only to have the end result be that of tragedy. Some of these stories are quite gruesome, so if you may be disturbed by any of this content, please click off of the video. Here are 3 real instances of Craigslist posts with a dark outcome. March 2015, Boulder County, Colorado. Donnell Lane, a 34-year-old former nurse's aide, posted an ad in Craigslist items for sale section advertising that she was selling baby clothing. Michelle Wilkins, a 26-year-old woman who was 7 months pregnant at the time, responded to the ad and agreed to meet with Donnell at her home in Longmont. Unfortunately for Michelle and her yet unborn child, the events that followed when she entered the house were something straight from a horror film. Donnell opened the door and let Michelle inside, telling her to follow her into the basement to see the clothing. The two began sorting through the clothing and struck up a conversation about shopping, relationships, and pregnancies. All the while Michelle chatted with Donnell, she felt that something was off about her, and the more that they chatted, the more uncomfortable Michelle became. Michelle told Donnell that she needed to leave and started to make her way out of the house when Donnell, without warning, suddenly attacked and violently beat her. Donnell grabbed a pillow and attempted to suffocate her. When that didn't work, she resorted to choking her, all the while Michelle pleading with her and asking her why she was doing this. She then smashed a glass bottle over her head, causing her to lose consciousness. As if this wasn't horrific enough, what Donnell did next was nothing short of pure evil. Donnell stabbed Michelle in the stomach with 2 kitchen knives, reached her hands inside the open gash, and violently ripped her unborn child from her womb. She then took the broken bottle and used it to stab Michelle in the neck. Amazingly, Michelle was able to get herself into a nearby room and lock the door, preventing her attacker from finishing the job. Despite bleeding profusely and being on the verge of passing out, she was able to call 911 and direct the police to her location inside the home. When they located her, Michelle was so deep in shock from the attack that she did not even realize that her child was no longer inside her. Police arrested Donnell Lane for the attack, and it was later learned that the baby was left inside a bathtub in the house, and tragically, did not survive. What's more, police could not leverage a murder charge against the attacker because under Colorado law, a fetus is not considered a person. Michelle has since made a full physical recovery from the attack, but it's extremely doubtful that the mental torment and anguish will ever fully heal. Akron, Ohio, 2011. A Craigslist ad was posted for a caretaker position on a farm with the following text: "Simply watch over a 688-acre patch of hilly farmland and feed a few cows. You will get $300 a week and a nice 2-bedroom trailer. Someone older and single preferred, but will consider all. Relocation a must. You must have a clean record and be trustworthy. This is a permanent position." The farm is mainly used as a hunting preserve, is overrun with game, has a stocked 3-acre pond, but some beef cattle will be kept. Nearest neighbor is a mile away. The place is secluded and beautiful. It will be a real getaway for the right person. Job of a lifetime. As one would expect, the ad received a lot of attention and inquiries, and numerous jobless men met with the 52-year-old Richard Beasley, the ad's poster, to be interviewed for the position. Several of the men interviewed were denied the position, and would later recall that Beasley looked and behaved exactly like someone would expect a farm worker to. He was soft-spoken with rough skin and a scraggly beard. Nothing seemed odd as he had had lunch with the men, and none of them, even the one that said he had a good sense for trouble, ever noticed anything about Beasley to raise any concerns or suspicion. However, Beasley was not at all the way he seemed. He had a criminal record for burglary, and in 2004 he was released from prison in Texas before moving to Ohio. It was also alleged that he suffered with depression and alcoholism, and was even sexually abused as a child. Despite this, no one that met with him in response to the ad said that any red flags were raised. Everything seemed on the up and up until Ralph Geiger, David Pauly, Timothy Kern, and Scott Davis all applied for the job and met with Beasley individually for an interview, with all 4 men being offered the same position. 48-year-old Scott Davis met with Beasley 4 weeks after responding to the ad. After being offered the position, Davis packed up his belongings and made the drive to Ohio. Beasley introduced himself to Davis as Jack. Beasley was accompanied by Brogan Rafferty, a 16-year-old high school student that had already had a criminal record. Beasley told Davis that Brogan was his 16-year-old nephew. The 3 had breakfast together at a nearby restaurant and talked about the job, while Beasley seemed to take an odd interest in the contents that Davis had in the trailer he had brought with him. They then drove to a parking lot in Caldwell, and Davis was told to leave his truck and trailer parked there to be picked up later, so the 3 men could drive together to the property. Brogan drove the men to a wooded area, before Beasley instructed him to pull the car over and drop Davis and him off so he could get some equipment he had left just down the hill. Davis followed behind Beasley, and the 2 men made their way down the hill and stopped once they reached a small creek at the bottom. Beasley then said he was lost, and told Davis that they should make their way back up the hill so he could retrace his steps. When Davis turned around and began his slow climb up the hill, he heard the distinct click of a gun hammer being cocked back. When he turned around, Beasley fired a round into Davis's elbow. Davis ran for the woods as gunshots erupted behind him, darting and weaving through the trees while blood poured from his arm. Surprisingly, none of the subsequent shots hit their intended mark, and Davis was able to hide himself in the woods until nightfall, before finding his way back to the road and walking for help. When the farm property was checked, as well as an area near the mall where Beasley had conducted some of the previous interviews, the bodies of the other 3 men were unearthed from shallow graves. Brogan Rafferty, the 16-year-old accomplice, had even written a poem entitled Midnight Shift, which was pulled from the hard drive on his computer. In it, he tells about his involvement helping to conceal the bodies, with one line reading, "We showered him in lime, like a satanic baptism." The 2 had been murdering men to rob them and steal their identities before burying their bodies on the property. Richard Beasley was sentenced to death in 2012, while Brogan Rafferty was given life in prison. Pennsylvania, 2013. Miranda Barber, married just 3 weeks, and with her husband's knowledge and consent, had posted an ad in the Craigslist personal section promising to offer companionship in exchange for money to men that replied to the ad. This apparently worked, and it was not long before a 42-year-old engineer named Troy LaFerrera responded to the ad and met up with the 19-year-old woman in November in the parking lot of a shopping mall. Unbeknownst to LaFerrera was that the girl he had met up with had something entirely different in mind than a casual encounter, and that her new husband was hiding under a blanket in the backseat of the car. LaFerrera entered the car with her, and when he leaned in and made contact with Miranda, she said the code words to her husband, "Do you see the stars tonight?" It was then that Miranda's husband reached from behind the back seat and wrapped a cord around LaFerrera's neck to strangle him. Miranda then pulled a knife from the car door compartment and repeatedly stabbed LaFerrera in the chest a total of 20 times. Once he was dead, the couple drove around for a while before finding a dark alley and dumping the body in a backyard. They then drove to get cleaning supplies from a store and got to work scrubbing the excessive amounts of blood from the car seat where the victim's body had sat. Seemingly unfazed by the horrific and violent murder they had just committed, the 2 newlyweds went to celebrate their night of homicide at a local strip club, still embracing the thrill of the night's events. When LaFerrera's body was discovered, his cell phone and the text messages sent on it led police straight to Miranda. She later confessed to the murder and spoke of how she was a Satanist and that the murder was justified because the victim was a sick individual for replying to the ad and that he had tried to molest her after getting into the car. She then went on to brag about how she had actually killed many more men, as many as 45. Both Miranda and her husband were arrested in December of that same year.